I think a very important part of this conference is with the California Endowment, we co-sponsored an important poll by Hart Research. First, of registered voters in California, and second, a poll of parents living under 150% of the federal poverty line. And we engaged Geoff Garin and Hart Research to do that polling. I think you all received handouts of the PowerPoint at the registration desk, and you can take notes on that. In addition, and we'll do this throughout the panels of the day, you've got pads of paper and pencils on each desk, and if you have questions at the end of the presentation, just write them on there, raise your hand, and we'll come around and collect them and provide them to the speaker or moderator. So that'll start with this presentation. Geoff Garin joined Hart Research in 1978. He's been president of Hart Research since 1984. As many of you may know, Hart is one of the couple leading research firms in the country. It's done over 5,000 opinion surveys, about 3 million interviews, 5,000 focus groups. It's done polling for over 400 political campaigns, including Hillary Clinton, 40 either current or former members of the United States Senate, including Dianne Feinstein, and it's had a tremendous focus on public interest groups, including the Children's Defense Fund. It also does opinion polling for major media outlets, including NBC News, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, NPR, perhaps most important, ESPN. And for Geoff himself, in addition to his enormous political resume, he's done really landmark policy research and analysis for major foundations, including Gates, for major educational institutions as well, including Harvard, on the issues of global health, school reform, healthcare reform, fiscal policy, and now on child poverty in California. Geoff Garin.
Good morning, everybody. I am honored to be part of your program. Thank you for having me. I'm going, as Conway said, I'm going to hopefully report to you, there you go, report to you on the results of these two surveys that we conducted in California, one with a representative cross-section of registered voters in the state. That survey was done at the end of October. And then, in addition to that, we interviewed a cross-section of 300 low-income parents in California. Those interviews were primarily done in the first week of November. In order to qualify for that survey, you had to have a child living with you at home. And as Conway mentioned, we asked people about their household incomes and took people only if that was 150% or less of the federal poverty level. Obviously, there are challenges in reaching low-income respondents in the state. We did our best to address those and deal with those, so that this is the sample of respondents in terms of their educational attainment. 2/3 of them have no education beyond high school. 38% are not high school graduates. These are all low income by definition, including 70% of the respondents have household incomes of under $25,000 a year. You can see the ethnic composition of the sample, 54% Latino. Of those, 63% took the survey in Spanish, and the balance took it in English, and you can see the distribution of the rest of the sample. 39% of the respondents were female by about 2 to 1, and of the entire sample, 40% are single-parented households. of the female sample, it's a substantial majority in single-parented households. The purpose of these surveys, by the way, are twofold. First, we wanted to understand and measure public will in California to address the crisis of childhood poverty, and to understand what Californians understand about the nature of poverty in the state. For the survey of low-income parents, we really wanted to give voice to a group of people who, in political terms, often are voiceless, to be able to document not only their struggles and challenges, but also their aspirations and their experiences of today's economy. You can see that we're very slowly coming out of the Great Recession, and you can see that for the electorate as a whole, a majority of Californians say that by about 2 to 1, that in terms of their own circumstances, they are living comfortably. 34% say that, or at least have some money left over at the end of the month. For 34% of registered voters, that's not the case. They say that they're just meeting expenses, or 8% say that they are not even doing that. But for people in these low-income parents, it is a very different story. 73% of them say at best, they are just barely getting by. 21% say that they're not even able to meet their basic monthly expenses. So that you know that when you hear your neighbors talk, they talk about tough economic times. There's not really a kind of an understanding of what the qualitative difference of what that means for people who live in poverty today. We asked people to guess in their own sense that if you have a family of 4, you are poor if you have a household income of under what? And the median response among voters is about $39,000. Among people with incomes over $100,000, 69% of them give us a number over $40,000 to say you're poor if you don't have an income of over $40,000. In terms of why people are poor, this is a kind of a threshold question that we've been asking over the years. The plurality of Californians see this primarily as an issue of circumstances beyond people's own control, and so that there's a recognition of that. What you'll see from time to time in this survey is there are important differences by political affiliation. So the Democrats, by a margin of 36 points, say that poverty is the product of circumstances, but Republican voters have a different view, and by 22 points, they say it's mainly a matter of people not doing enough to help themselves. The reality is that among low-income families themselves, they say that circumstances matter, but so does individual effort. So you can see that 35% say it's primarily about people not doing enough to help themselves, and another 14% say it's at least partly that. This is a very important set of questions here. We asked people how they've been affected by these 2 important changes that have occurred in recent years. You can see that the budget cuts that have occurred in California persistently and have taken a toll on low-income families. 76% said they've been hurt by those at least a little, including 58% who say they've been hurt by those budget cuts by a lot or some. But what really has taken a toll on low-income families today is the recession and the weak economy. And the important message to the people of California, and you'll see that reiterated throughout the research, is that this is fun. What these people, low-income parents, want to do is work and support their families. That's their goal. It's not to be dependent. It is to be able to do the best they can for their children. And the recession has damaged severely their ability to do that. You can see that 53% say that they have been hurt a great deal by the recession. Another 22% say they've been hurt some by that. This has been particularly true among parents at the older end of the age spectrum. So for parents in this universe who are over the age of 50, they're most likely to say that they've been damaged in a very severe way. In this question about, what are the problems that low-income families face, low-income parents face, you can see that there is a there there, that there's something truly preeminent in all of this. And again, it underlines the orientation that parents have to working and supporting their children and their families, which is the biggest problems that they face day in and day out is a shortage of jobs and the fact that there are too many jobs that are part-time or don't pay enough to earn a living from. So that there really is this focus on jobs and work among low-income parents. There are other issues that are very, very important. In a moment, we'll talk about the centrality of education, but you can see that the lack of funding and support for good public schools is a significant challenge. Violence in their neighborhoods is a significant challenge. Being able to afford a place to live is a significant challenge. I do just want to put the numbers on early education and child care in perspective, because remember, this is a survey of parents 0 to 18, so that the universe, the marketplace for early education is not of 100% of our sample. So that if you only have older children, that's less of an immediate and personal. So I don't want to suggest here that those are unimportant issues to parents of young children. They are very important issues to parents of young children. I mentioned that the concern that parents express about the lack of support for good public schools in their neighborhoods. This is so important because this is if I could sit down with the people of California and explain something that we've learned to everybody, it's how aspirational this group of people is. And that the aspirations are really revolve around education and education for their children. They want their children to be well educated. They want their children to graduate. They want their children to achieve a higher education. That's not just for their children, by the way. Many people talk about that in terms of their own personal aspirations. They're still looking for a chance to do that. There are other things that matter to them, but these are we talk about dreamers and in terms of immigration. All of these people are dreamers. They have dreams for their kids and dreams for themselves, and at some level have not given up on those dreams. We asked about participation in a variety of safety net programs. You can see that 71% say that in the past year they've received assistance, healthcare assistance in the form of Medi-Cal or some other kind of public health insurance program. 63% have received some kind of nutrition assistance, either through WIC, through CalFresh, or through SNAP. The things I would note about that is that while those are longer lines than everything else on the chart, I would assume that something approaching 100% are eligible for assistance in those programs, so that there is a pretty substantial delta in terms of who's eligible and who's getting. And then you could see that there's a substantial drop-off. I think Marion will know better than I or Peter that most of these people would be eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit, and only slightly more than one in three are taking advantage of that. Actually not 100%, because not 100% are working, but very many are, much larger than 36% of the sample. We asked people who do not participate in health benefits or nutrition benefits or EITC, why not? And there are some people who say, choose not to, but that is not really the story for most Californians. The story is it's just too damn complicated, and they don't, and there's no real clarity of who's eligible for what. rather than making these programs accessible so parents can lift up their children. They make them complicated, so it is harder for parents to do that. But even with the level of participation in Medi-Cal and in nutrition programs, parents, here's the other thing I would like Californians to understand, is that these parents worry about the basics for their kids. They worry about feeding their kids. They worry about getting health care for their kids when their kids are sick. Even with the safety net programs that are currently in force and in existence, they worry about that, and they worry about having a good school to send their kids to. But to me, one of the headlines of all of this is that if you just take that they worry frequently or sometimes, you have a majority of low-income parents who say they worry about getting their kids health care at least some of the time. They worry about being able to get their kids healthy food or any food at all some of the time, and a majority worry at least some of the times about being able to get their kids the basic public education that really is guaranteed to them in the Constitution of California. Here's an important result, which is, and who knew what I honestly didn't know what the result of this would be. It's a very simple question. Does government have a responsibility to ensure that children do not live in poverty? And the important thing that politicians need to understand is that Californians embrace this responsibility. By 63 to 30, the voters of California say, yes, government does have that responsibility. Among the low-income parents themselves, by 73 to 21, they say it does. You can see, again, that there are partisan differences on the response here, so the Democrats are more likely to embrace this obligation. Among Republicans, we've divided Republicans into two groups. The majority of Republicans who describe themselves as being conservative, only 36% say government has a responsibility in this regard. But among other Republicans, people who are more moderate, a majority of them do say that government has this responsibility. Not only do people recognize that there is a responsibility in California to ensure that children do not live in poverty, but there's also a view that California is not doing enough in this regard. 45% at least say that government is spending too little on programs to help poor families with children. And remember, we've gone from a kind of a moral case to programs. It's actually not a very positive word. People don't trust programs. But even in that context, 45% say spending too little on programs to help poor families with children. To me, one of the shocking results here is if you compare it to what's right above it, it is taken as an article of faith that California, that it is good politics to be pro-senior. Every politician brags about how much they do for senior citizens. But the truth is Californians are just as emphatic about the need to do more for poor children as they are about the need to stand up for senior citizens in the state. And it's actually pretty close to what people think about post-secondary education. The thing that stands apart, of course, is K-12 education, where 62%, a related issue, as we've seen, where 62% say that California is doing too little. Here, we asked about the priority of two different things. To what extent should reducing the number of children living in poverty be a priority for California? And to what extent should reducing taxes on individuals and businesses be a priority in California? Again, the one on the right is taken as an article of faith, that that's really what we always ought to be doing, or that politicians, is that it's great politics to be talking about reducing taxes on individuals and businesses. But the truth is 20% more of California voters are likely to say that reducing child poverty should be a priority than to say that about reducing taxes on individuals and businesses. So it's just another measure to put this in context in terms of the political salience of all of this. There really is. I think part of the story of this is that there is much more will and concern around the issues of child poverty than people in elected office sometimes assume. You can see that among Democrats, are much more likely to assign a high priority to children living in poverty than on cutting taxes. That's true with decline to state voters as well. It is true with moderate Republicans, but not true with conservative Republicans. In terms of what that money would be best spent on, in terms of if California were to do more, what are the kinds of programs that where there is genuine public will? And if you look at the column on the far right, where we're not just measuring broad support, but really intensity of support, there are a number of things that really stand out where the public will is, I think, well established, ensuring that all children get good health care, improving the quality of public schools, offering more after-school activities for kids, improving support and outcomes for youth in foster care, ensuring that all children have high-quality preschool programs, including Head Start. So you can see that there you have a large majority of Californians who not only favor those things, but who strongly favor those things. We had a companion question in the low-income survey about to what extent would each of these be helpful to you and your family. We're not showing it because it turns out that low-income parents said virtually everything on this list would be very helpful to them and their children, with not very much distinction among those items. And then the final thing I want to share with you is a kind of a measure of public will, and it's why we include it. We don't have lie detectors on our phones. We're waiting for the NSA to help us with that part of our research. But we did ask people, just as a measure of do you really mean it, would you be willing to pay $50 more a year in state taxes to reduce the number of children living in poverty in California? This is just a measurement we use a lot of the time. And I can't tell you how often people say $50 may seem like a nominal amount. Actually, if everybody in California paid $50 more and it went to this purpose, that'd be a pretty big pot of money. But how many different things people say no? But child poverty is not one of those things. Here in California, 64% of voters say yes, they would be willing to do that, including 40% who say they would definitely be willing to do that. So again, the message to elected officials in the state is clear. It is safe to go in the water. That this is an issue that people care about, where they understand the responsibility and obligation of the state. And the other message to both elected officials and to the public here is that by doing more on the issue of child poverty, you're really not taking the place of parents, but you are helping parents who are very aspirational for their children and for themselves, who want to work hard on behalf of their kids, and that are looking for opportunities to lift their own children up to a better life. So with that, there's more to the polls, and I'm happy to share all of our results with you, but let me answer whatever questions I can in the few minutes I have. How do we translate this data into policy is one question. One thing, simply the answer on that, I think, is for elected officials really to understand that they have a charge to do that. I think that one thing that strikes me as being very tangible and concrete is addressing the Byzantine nature of applying for safety net programs and support programs. I think we get clear information from parents about that. Somebody asked about what results surprised me the most. I think to me it would be the one about seniors, that people caring as much about poor kids as they care about seniors, given how well established it is that that support for seniors is central to our politics. And why are low-income parents more likely to say that people aren't doing enough to help themselves in that very first slide. I think that's a really kind of interesting question. The truth is, poor people don't kind of romanticize poverty. They know what kind of the people's lives are like. And that really, that we've, with Marion, and we've done focus group research with people living in poverty, and that they recognize that it really takes both things for this problem to be addressed. But they do, that low-income people do also understand the pressing nature of circumstances. How many parents stated that fear was a reason not to be using public benefits? That was really a very low number. It didn't come up all that often. And I don't know if you mean the fear in the context of immigration status or things of that sort, but it didn't come up very often. But I'm happy to take a second look at that, particularly citizenship in California obviously was not a criterion for participating in the survey. The way we dealt with issues of this question is the only threshold was you had to have lived in California for 1 year. We never asked people about their citizenship status or their nationality or anything of that sort. Somebody has a question about single-parent households. Was there any knowledge about how many missing men in households? I'm not sure I totally am getting the handwriting, but this is not something that we asked about particularly in the research, but we do know what the distributions are in terms of single-parented households in the sample. And here's one last one. We don't, somebody asked if we have a breakdown by county. We don't, the county level is too small for the sample size with which we're dealing, but we do look at Los Angeles, we look at the rest of Southern California, we look at Northern California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and the rest of the state. Conway and Sandra and others have access to the crosstabs. We'd be happy to, if you've got particular questions about the geographical breaks on these responses, we'd be happy to help you answer those. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear me out.